Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. Well, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. It's great to see you again.
This is something people talk about all the time, backdoor Roth IRAs, but I feel like a lot of people don't know how they work and who they're for. So I want to start off with, can you explain what a backdoor Roth IRA is and how it works?
Yeah, I guess what I would want to do is start with what it's not. It is not some sort of shady, illegal, offshore, sketchy thing. It is a very legal, um, kind of administrative penalty lap for people who want to do a Roth IRA. Okay, so all that said, I would say the most simple way to describe it is it is a Roth IRA with an extra step. So instead of just contribute to a Roth IRA, you contribute to a traditional IRA and convert to a Roth IRA. So it's kind of two things. And in fact, I would actually say there's three steps. It's contribute, convert, and then clean it up. And when I say clean it up, there's some things you do on your tax form, but it really is that simple: contribute, convert, clean it up. Um, and the reason why there is a thing called backdoor Roth IRA is that there are income limits associated with being able to contribute to a regular Roth IRA. And I'll actually call that a front door Roth IRA just to create the delineation. But for married families in 2024, if the gross income is over $230,000, you enter a phase out range where you can't do a regular front door Roth IRA. You might as well just do a backdoor Roth IRA. For single families, that actually starts at $146,000. So it's not a lot of income for, say, like a single O5 that maybe has a medical career field bonus. Like that's a common one that I see. Um, so longish answer there, but it's a contribution, a conversion, and some cleanup.
Is it something you do once or is it something you do every year or
Yeah,
or have the potential to do every year?
yeah, it is that it's the latter. So I like to describe it as it's a thing you do in high income years. So for some families, that high income year becomes like every year at a certain point. Common inflection points would be two military spouses that have some high income, or two spouses that both make about the same. Gusting over $100,000 gets you there pretty quick, but it's easy to get there with some other kind of one-off events. If you have a big bonus in one year, that can sometimes trigger it, but only for that year. If you sell a home that was a rental home and you have a bunch of depreciation recapture, well, that can trigger it for just that one year, and then you go back to front door Roth IRA after that. Same thing if you sold a bunch of investments, taxable investments, maybe to raise a down payment to buy a home, that could trigger it for just that one year. So some families you enter what I like to call backdoor Roth club, where you are now going to do that probably every year till you retire, and then other families it's going to be a one-off here and there.
When we say backdoor Roth IRA, is that the same as backdoor IRA? Because I feel like when people are Googling this, like there might be some confusion.
Yeah, there's really only two types of um, retirement account activities that get the backdoor name to it. One is backdoor Roth, and so yeah, people might just call that backdoor IRA. And then every now and then in like the uber nerd financial circles, you'll hear mega backdoor Roth IRA, which I think is just kind of funny sounding, but that
It
is
sounds
not
not
super.
real. It sounds not real.
Yeah, it does sound not real, and it really only affects some folks who are both high earners and they really want to save extra instead of go spend it and have fun. Um, and they have a 401k type plan that allows it. It's kind of niche, frankly. So yeah, I would say that most folks, if they say backdoor IRA, they probably mean backdoor Roth IRA because there's no need to do any sort of backdoor extra administrative steps with just a traditional IRA.
Yeah, they probably should have called it like sidestep IRA instead of, because you're right, it does sound illegal.
Oh yeah, it does sound like, smoke-filled room, don't tell my CPA, but it has been legitimized. And in fact, it was is really kind of, I think the issue about whether or not this was a legitimate thing to do was kind of finally put to bed at the end of 2017 with the Jobs Act. Congress specifically stated in their conference report for that law that there is no reason why someone cannot do a contribution followed by a conversion. Like they acknowledge the backdoor Roth, and that's another thing too that some folks will get kind of I would say sidetracked with the IRS, not to say that they couldn't raise an issue about this, but for the hundreds of thousands of people who use it per year, who are not exactly depriving Uncle Sam of any tax revenue, it's just highly unlikely that this is going to be the thing that the IRS decides to go in on. It's noise level as far as what it does revenue wise. But again, Congress has said it's okay. There's no known like tax court case law that involves this. So I don't. I mean, I'm here about talking in public, and you'll find lots and lots of other folks who do. I don't have any concerns about the legitimacy of this as a effective way for higher earner families or families in a high income year to still get into a Roth IRA.
So the upside of doing one of these is to save taxes. Is that the only thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you start with the assumption that a family wanted to save in a Roth IRA, maybe they had done that every year, and they don't like the idea of being locked out either because their income is going to be high going forward, or they just have a high income year, then I'd say it starts with like, hey, we just like to fund our Roth IRA because we know we have to save for our future retirement. It's a really tax efficient way to do it. One of the core reasons people like Roth IRA and Roth TSP and Roth 401k is just that you pay the tax rate that you know about today, and it's sort of tax insurance because if you have a higher tax rate in the future because Congress changes the law, or you move to a state that has state income taxes and you eventually start paying those, your tax rate when you pull that money out of the account would be higher later. So pay less tax or pay tax today to avoid paying higher tax tomorrow. So the reason why you'd want to do backdoor Roth is just because your income was too high to do front door Roth. You still want to save. You acknowledge that Roth is the best for your long-term tax suppression, and so you get to do it if you will do the extra administrative steps involved in a backdoor Roth.
What are some of the drawbacks of doing a backdoor Roth IRA?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So one of the main drawbacks, other than it is a little bit of an extra administrative burden, is that because it is a contribution followed by a conversion, um, there are several different 5-year periods that are relevant to IRAs, but specific to this, when you do a conversion, the dollars that you converted, you are not supposed to pull those out of the account for 5 years. That's pretty irrelevant for most people who aren't anywhere near retirement. And so it is a drawback if you wanted to have some sort of hedge that, hey, I'm putting money in my Roth IRA, but I might want to pull that back out for some other opportunity before retirement. It's just such an uncommon scenario. Most of the folks I talk to, they're still, looking for things that will make a difference decades down the road, and that's where this comes into play. And so that 5-year lockup period is just pretty irrelevant. So that would be one downside. Another downside would just be that it is extra work to do it. You've got to have a traditional IRA account open, which a lot of families wouldn't have a reason to have a traditional IRA until they get to Backdoor Roth Club. So now you've got an extra account you got to pay attention to. It's not that hard to mess up. And if you do mess it up, in addition to the kind of administrative burden for fixing anything that you might screw up, there's also the chance that you might actually pay tax twice on those dollars. This is what I spend every spring doing is reviewing people's taxes. And a lot of times tax preparers that aren't familiar with Backdoor Roth, and if there's no good communication with the tax preparer, it's possible that the tax preparer is going to list the transaction that created the backdoor Roth as a taxable one. Well, you paid taxes when you earned the money, and then if your tax preparer just reported it as income again, and no one catches it, well, you're going to pay tax twice on those dollars, and that's going to cost several $1,000s. So it does. I think it does require a lot of diligent follow-up to make sure that it goes properly and you didn't accidentally expose yourself to more taxes than you would have if you just skipped an IRA that year.
That's a good segue to my next question is should people try this on their own or should they seek counsel and if so, who?
Yeah. Um, This I think, like most things in the information age, you can easily find out all the steps. I've written countless blog articles, and I know I will write more. And I'm not alone. There's lots of people who've put out really good content on how to do this. But there's the same could be said of how to fix your car and how to invest, and yet people are still gonna be like, I might like someone flying on my wing. So I do think that if you aren't totally confident in doing it, it could certainly be worth paying someone for a little bit of time to review your work prior to moving out. I find that some tax professionals are very backdoor Roth positive, and they're more than happy to talk you through it. And there's others who are kind of like, I'm not so sure about that, and they don't want to go there. Uh, you'll find that some financial advisors, if they don't consider themselves to be very tax savvy, they might not feel great talking about it. There's certainly some companies, certainly larger financial advice companies, that generally have compliance rules against getting too deep into the weeds on this. So, I find that folks like myself, independent advisors that are very savvy on taxes, are more than happy to help talk folks through this if they still don't feel comfortable after kind of researching all the DIY literature about it.
In the scheme of other retirement accounts and the whole strategy of saving for your future, where should a backdoor Roth IRA be like prioritized in all of that?
Yeah. I like the mnemonic 4I 4T. And when I talk to folks about like kind of an order of operations for saving for retirement, the first four is your 401k or your TSP. And the idea being there that your very first retirement dollars should go into whatever account you have up to the match. So if you're TSP participant doing BRS, then up to a 5% match. It's common in the civilian world, anywhere from 3% and up. So it'd be a bummer to not get the match. Whether or not you do Roth TSP or Roth 401k is really going to be first dependent on, does the plan even allow it? A lot of civilian plans that are pretty bare bones don't even offer a Roth option. So one way in which the TSP is like very avant-garde, perhaps the only way in which the TSP is very avant-garde anymore. Uh, but so yeah, your first dollar should go into your employer plan to get the match. And then so for I, 4T, the I is actually IRAs. I'm a big fan of filling up your IRAs before you fill up your employer plan. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One would be that IRAs generally have a lot more and less expensive investment options than employer plans, whether it's TSP or civilian 401k. And if you're doing front door Roth IRA, one of the great advantages of that is you can always pull out contributions to a front door Roth IRA anytime, tax and penalty free. So if you ever did need to break glass and get access to some of your retirement money before retirement, you have that option. But you put those dollars in TSP or 401k, you have lost the option to really pull any sizable amount out without interest accruing and things like that. So um, after we do the first four up to the match and then the I, then we go back to our 401k or TSP and we top that thing up to as much as we can jam in there. So, under age 50, that's $23,000 a year this year. If you're over age 50, then you get an extra 7,500. And then, of course, I'll bring back the mega backdoor Roth. If you happen to have a plan that allows additional contributions, then you might be able to go beyond that 23,000. Military members could do that when they deploy. There's the ability to go beyond the $23,000 limit. A lot of complexity to that. Doug Norman, I think, has kind of wrote the Bible on how to do that. And then after you've maxed out your IRAs and your TSP or your 401k, well, now you're at that T of 4I, 4T, and that's just a taxable brokerage account, whether that's titled, with your spouse or individually or to a trust. You can do that in a very tax efficient way to make sure that you're still optimizing dollars for retirement. But I do think it's hard to make the case for most families not to top off the qualified, tax advantage retirement accounts first before going to a taxable account.
What's the timing or best timing of all of this to actually do a backdoor Roth IRA? Is it like at the beginning of the year, end of the year, middle of the year?
Yeah, great question. Um, I joke that when you're in Fight Club, the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of Backdoor Roth Club is you talk about Backdoor Roth Club. And just like Fight Club had some norms, like you can't cry and you got to get in there and fight and all that stuff. Like Backdoor Roth Club has some norms too, and that's one of them. Is you really would like to contribute as early in the year as possible. Uh, with Backdoor Roth, because it's a contribution followed by a conversion, if you've historically done dollar cost averaging, where you put 1/12 of your IRA contribution into the account each month throughout the year, that's great for front door Roth IRA. But for backdoor Roth IRA, it's pretty problematic. I can go into more of that in a second, but to kind of get back to your question, if you were able to contribute the full, let's say $7,000 that you can do under age 50 in 2024, if you did $7,000 on January 2nd, January 1st to be a holiday, so January 2nd would be the first potential business day each year, then those dollars have got a whole extra year to earn compounding returns compared to dollars that get put uh, in sequence throughout the year. Now there can be downside risk to that. If you put in $7,000 on January 2nd and it's a lousy year in the market, you're going to kick yourself. Most years, however, you will have benefited from extra time in the market, and so there's quite a bit of research out there that generally says lump sum investing as early as practical when you have the money is far more efficient for long-term returns than dollar cost averaging. There's a psychology element too. So if you either don't have the cash on January 2nd or at some point early in the year, um, or you just can't stomach doing it all at once, then I think the best time to do it is the time that you'll actually do it. But I'd still try to bias as early in the year as possible.
Yes, gives it more time to grow. But I could see,
Mhm.
some people, their risk tolerance, I once somebody told me a story about a woman that she would go in person to pay in cash her bills, but wouldn't pay it all at once. She would like pay like some one week and then come back the next week, but she'd do that with all the people she, had to pay her bills because she couldn't handle paying the bill in full. So I think to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and I certainly saw some of that with my mom growing up. I mean, my parents were children of Depression era. We straighten out rusty nails and we reuse them type folks, and so I've got a little bit of that in my DNA as well. But and that does kind of go back to one other element of like why to consider doing it upfront early in the year. When you think about it, to need to do backdoor Roth, your family is bringing in over $230,000 of gross income in the year. That's quite a bit of money compared to most Americans. So, not that it doesn't happen that people who make that kind of money don't have a bunch of cash sitting around, but it is actually fairly common that if you're making that kind of money, you can get yourself to the point where you have that amount of cash ready to go early in the year. So,
Are there some common mistakes that you see people make when it comes to backdoor IRAs?
I would say the most common and the most painful is to wake up one day and realize, ooh, I needed to start doing backdoor Roth about 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh,
Um, and because what happens there is to avoid the risk of a really gnarly tax bill that just never stops growing, you have to correct any prior year excess Roth contributions. I had a family I was working with this year that um, they woke up to this and they realized that they had about 4 or 5 years where they were over the limit. They were dual income or dual O5s that became dual O6s. And so they had to pull out their contributions, each of them, for the past 4 or 5 years. It was roughly $50,000. And then there's an interesting little twist that in the most recent year, you have to pull out the contribution plus all the earnings or any losses, which becomes a little bit of a math headache. And some custodians are more helpful than others about removing it. So that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see is just not realizing that you needed to do it and then having to go through the correction issue. Another really common one is they realize it in the year that it happens. Like this is common when people get a big bonus or sell a house, but they've already made Roth contributions, like front door Roth contributions for the year. So halfway through the year, they've put $3,000 or $4,000 into the front door Roth, and now they realize, oh shoot, I got to do backdoor Roth. That's very fixable. It's just some admin pain. Um, again, of removing the contributions plus the earnings and then kind of starting over with the backdoor Roth process. Um, Other mistakes would be just wait until too close to April 15th. Yesterday was April 15th. I'm not sure when this will come out, but yesterday was April 15th. And I literally had a family that we were, doing wire transfers on the morning of April 15th to try to beat the clock so that they could do their very first ever backdoor Roth IRA. So it's really cool that we got it done, but gosh, it would have been swell to do that just, I don't know, a couple weeks, couple months earlier. So,
I
yeah.
bet they won't make that mistake again next year.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I'm going to fire myself if they do. So,
That's good to know.
Yeah.
When you mentioned it earlier, but in all of this, people don't know what they don't know. And I've seen this across, like, professionally for me, all the business stuff that I do is what questions should people ask if they are seeking help with this? If they're seeking help from a financial advisor, planner, or they're asking for a tax professional. What should they be asking to make sure that this person's qualified? Because you mentioned earlier, you might get a planner that doesn't have a tax background. You might get a tax professional that is kind of not into backdoor Roth IRAs.
I think a good question that would tease out whether or not you potentially have an imposter is something along the lines of, hey, would you be willing to review my most recent year's tax returns that I've already filed with me? And I'd like to understand what your process is for reviewing a tax return and how you could show me value from that. Um, to me, that's an easy one. I mean, I think it'd kind of be like a car repair place offering to do a free inspection. It's just something if you do it all the time, and it's like a very light lift to do it. And so I think if you ask an advisor to review your tax return and they're kind of circumspect about it, that would be a red flag to me because it's just something that is should be easy to do, and I would happily do that with any prospect that comes in the door. From that process, it ought to be pretty evident that an advisor knows which lines to look on for evidence of things like backdoor Roth or a need for backdoor Roth, and then also which forms should or shouldn't be present. And so, to me, that would really cut through any other song and dance about whether or not that person knows what they're doing, because they'd be able to start with, okay, hey, on line one, let's look at your gross income, because for the vast majority of military families, gross income is actually going to be the formula for whether or not you're in the Roth conversion or the Roth IRA phase out range. So let's look there. And then, okay, let's also look at line 4A and 4B, because that's going to help us understand if in the previous years this was done properly or improperly, if you thought you did it right. And then after that, let's take a look at Form 8606. Is it even present in the tax return? A lot of times it's not. That's another indicator that if it was attempted, it wasn't done properly. And then there could be times where it was attempted, but there was an issue with what's called pro-rata, and I can go more into that later. But maybe that will show up as a problem that needs to also factor into future Roth conversions and backdoor Roth IRAs. And so I do think that just willingness and ability to walk through the tax return and see the clear indicators of backdoor Roth activity and necessity would be what you'd want to look for.
That's great advice. You're right. That would kind of be a tell right there if they couldn't answer those things right away, that maybe they're not a good fit for you, and you might be better Googling it than hiring them. You touched on it just a second there. What is the pro rata? Is it pro rata rule?
Yeah, pro rata rule. Yeah. Um, so as again, at the most simple, backdoor Roth IRA it's a process. It's a contribution to a traditional IRA, a conversion of those dollars to a Roth IRA, and then you clean it up with proper accounting on your tax forms. There are some nuances to this. So the IRS looks at all of your pre-tax IRAs except inherited IRAs. So that would be a traditional IRA, a simple IRA, and a SEP IRA. They kind of aggregate all those together, and you could actually have a dozen different traditional IRAs. I don't wish that upon anyone, but you could have multiple traditional IRAs, and the IRS looks at that as all one big IRA balance, all one pre-tax balance. So if you have any balance greater than zero in all of those other pre-tax IRAs, and you contribute after-tax dollars as part of this backdoor Roth process, and then you convert from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA, the IRS says, hey, look, anytime you do a conversion, it's going to be a pro rata amount of these new after-tax dollars, which they call basis, and the pre-tax dollars. And so you can't just do a Roth conversion of these new after-tax dollars. You have to bring over some of the pre-tax dollars and pay tax on them. And that's really what the IRS wants, is they want you to pay tax as soon as possible on any dollars that you're liable to pay taxes on. So this pro rata rule sometimes catches people, and what I'll find is they'll come to me and say, "Hey, we did a backdoor Roth this year. Can you check my tax return? Did we do it right?" And the first thing I'm going to say is, "I don't want to check your tax return. Let's look at all your investments accounts first." And what I'll find is they had, say, $50,000 from a 401k rollover that's in a traditional IRA. Well, now you have an issue because you actually converted, let's say $7,000 of after-tax dollars and a proportional amount of pre-tax dollars that has to be accounted for properly on your tax return. Um, there can be other nuances of this, but what often happens is that if a family doesn't realize this and take care of it and reflect it properly on their Form 8606, it propagates over a series of years, and the record keeping gets lost, and you pay tax twice on the dollars. Is what commonly happens. I mean, it's the IRS doesn't demand that you pay tax twice. It's just a common occurrence because of poor record keeping, and it starts with the pro rata rule. And so, again, another kind of rule of Backdoor Roth Club is don't even mess with Backdoor Roth unless you have a zero balance in your traditional IRAs or SEP IRA, simple IRA. Last thing to know about that would be none of this discussion has anything to do with TSP. There's no backdoor TSP. There's no tie-in between income limits and TSP. You can have all sorts of pre-tax dollars in your TSP, and it doesn't matter for this backdoor Roth. So this really is an IRA-focused issue.
That's a good distinction. I think too, like having maybe you can do it on your own, but for me, like having a second set of eyes on it is great because that would be horrible to pay tax twice. I think most everybody felt a pit in their stomach when you said that pay tax twice.
Yeah.
So would think you're trying to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it, like a $7,000 contribution in 2024 to an IRA. If you're doing Roth or backdoor Roth, well, 25% of that is what? $1,750, I think, math in public. And so if you end up paying tax twice on that, like that's quite a bit of money. You already paid it once when you earned it. Now you're going to pay like $3,000 of tax when you did not have to pay the extra, 1,750 of it. Um, so it is really important. And even though you are making a pretty high amount to have to do backdoor Roth, like no one likes to overpay the IRS, and they don't want you to overpay the IRS. So like don't overpay them. But it requires some diligence to sort that out.
Yeah, and they're not going to mention it probably if you overpay them.
Yeah, just the same way as if they don't generally have time to bother people about noise level issues, they probably aren't going to find it, when you made an error in their favor.
Yes. Well, now I want to ask you a couple of quick random questions I ask everybody. First off, what is one resource or tool that you use that makes your life easier?
Mm. Uh, wow. All right. I have decided to give in to being a slave to the calendar. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do two. But one, I've gotten pretty used to the idea that if I have a calendar in front of me that tells me what I'm supposed to do with my time, I will generally execute that calendar. I think that comes from like you execute the flying schedule, you
Yeah.
execute the air tasking order, whatever it is. If that's like, there's sure I could be flexible and just choose to go do other stuff, but if I made the calendar, I'm going to execute the calendar, and that's pretty helpful because it creates a good accountability mechanism, and it also helps me avoid putting too many things in onto the calendar when they just aren't going to fit. And so trying to be kind of calendar honest and calendar executing is really helpful. I'll throw out one other one that I discovered like 2 years ago, and it is absolutely amazing. It is an Outlook plugin called Boomerang. I think they make it for Gmail too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
that is amazing because like try as you might to not have your email inbox be your to-do list. It's really hard to not have that be the case. And given that most of us get hundreds of emails, Boomerang is amazing for saying, oh, I know I want to see this in the future, but I don't want to have to search for it. Gosh, it'd be nice if this just came back in a week or 4 hours or a month or whatever. And so Boomerang makes that super easy game changer of a tool.
That is actually a really good one. Sometimes I'm like, I cannot think about this. I'll have to think about this tomorrow or in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you're right, just send it away. So, because you don't want to forget about it. It's something you want to do or get back to somebody, but it's just you're not capable of it at that moment. So,
Yeah. And you don't need, I'm one of those people that if I have more than about 20 things in my inbox, Like I'm just going to declare email bankruptcy, delete them all, and hope that something terrible doesn't happen. So I like to keep a fairly clean inbox, and Boomerang helps with that quite a bit.
Yes, that's my goal too. Was always to have below 20 emails in there, but I'm getting a little over right now, so I'm gonna have to do some cleanup soon when I have when I find some free time.
Yeah.
All right, now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, which is game time. And today, in honor of your visit, we are going to do Florida trivia because I know you live in Florida. But like most of us military folks, I don't know if you are a native of Florida.
No.
Just the military sent you there.
Yeah. Yep. Transplant.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to give you five trivia questions with multiple choice answers. And if you get three out of the five correct, you get bragging rights that you won game time on the MILMO Show.
Got it. Yeah. Is there of repeat guests? Is there any sort of like ranking of people who've won game time multiple times?
No, but I really do need to start keeping better track.
Should put that on your to-do list.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll add that. I'll add
Yeah.
that. I am still working on getting stickers. I've said that for like 3 years, but one day, I will have I won game time on the Milmo Show stickers.
Very cool.
Okay, number one. What is the official state bird of Florida? Is it A, the flamingo, B, the mockingbird, or C, the pelican?
I'm going to go with Mockingbird.
That is correct.
All
It
right.
is technically the northern mockingbird. I looked it up just to double check.
All right.
Okay, number two. Which of these cities is not located in Florida? I feel like this one's a tee up, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Is it A, Miami, B, Tampa, or C, Atlanta? Again, not in Florida.
Atlanta is not in Florida.
Yes, Hotlanta is not in Florida. Okay, number three. What is the largest freshwater lake in Florida? Is it Lake Okeechobee, Lake Kissimmee, or C, Lake Apica? Apico?
I'm going to go with the first one. I think it's Okeechobee.
That is correct. That is
All
the
right.
largest freshwater lake in Florida. Okay, you're really on a tear here, Brian. All right, number four. Which of these is not a major theme park in Florida? Is it A, Walt Disney World, B, Universal Studios, or C, Busch Gardens?
Busch Gardens.
Okay, I feel like I may have given you some easy ones here. Okay, number five.
Kind
What
of.
is the state's official citrus fruit? Is it A, orange, B, grapefruit, or C, tangerine?
Let's go with orange.
That is correct. I thought you might be thrown off by one of those, but you weren't. So you definitely have bragging rights that you won game time on the Milmo Show. I appreciate you playing the game. Can you tell everybody listening where they can learn more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, you bet. So my firm is called Winged Wealth Management and Financial Planning, and you can find me at wingedwealth.com. I also post a decent amount on Facebook as well as LinkedIn. And I focus on military and veteran families. I kind of have a little bit of a niche of fighter pilot families. And I've been in business. This is my fourth year. I'm a certified financial planner, an IRS enrolled agent, and a military qualified financial planner. And I would do what I do for free if it put enough food on the table. I love what I do. Helping families is it absolutely is my ikigai, if you will. And yeah, it's great to get to do what I do after having a pretty cool Air Force career too.
That's awesome. Well, I will be sure to put all of that in the show notes for everybody so they can connect with you, Brian. Thank you again for being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me.